My title of the talk that I wish to offer on today is simply as this: Let Examples Answer. Booker T. Washington, the man, the person, the president. Many of you are aware that daily I offer a daily Washington word. Consists of a passage from Booker T. Washington, and I add additional commentaries. I like to talk about how the evolution of the Washington word came about. Many of you may or may not know that my hobby is that of reading and writing. You don't have to pay me to read and write. I read and write whether I'm paid or not to read and write. I have personally written over 10,000 commentaries, most of which are not published. And when I arrived on this campus, I committed myself to learn as much as I could about the man, Booker T. Washington, that I had heard about and that I had read about, but I still wanted to learn more about. I wanted to know how, during my time at Indiana University, how a major research university could honor such a man that I had hardly heard and discussed in the same light amongst our own constituency groups in HBCUs or at Tuskegee University. I wanted to know why they honored such a man, so what I decided to do was to order the sum whole collection of all of his letters and correspondence dating back to 1880 all the way to his last correspondence on November 10th, 1915, when he said, "Make sure my yard is well clean," in reference to the oaks that we now still honor. That was his last communication. It was not my intention at the time to offer a daily word to not only the campus community, alumni community, external stakeholder community, donors, financiers. But when I began to read about Booker T. Washington, I said, wow, I don't think many people know who was the founding principal and president of this university. We know, if you are a student of Up From Slavery, that Booker T. Washington shared his story about growing up enslaved. Now, we got problems today, but I dare say that neither of us have grown up enslaved and in shackles. And where he shared his trek, his journey to Hampton University, sleeping under a porch, and from there having to earn his tuition by sweeping floors so clean that you could eat off of them, and then being appointed by his former president, General Armstrong, recommended as the first man to come here to lead an institution that the citizens of Macon County and Tuskegee University cried out for. They said, "Send us a leader," and he said, "I'm sending you the very best I have," and his name is Booker T. Washington. What one will read in Up From Slavery, written in 1901, is a man who testified to every single word he had done with an accompanying work. He did not talk about being ethical, and he himself was not ethical. He did not talk about industry and working hard, and he himself was not full of industry and working hard. He did not tell students to do something that he himself had not done. And I think most of us are aware of this man, Booker T. Washington, as a person, because we all have known him. But here's a little secret for all of us, including myself, which led to my publication of the Washington Word. As you're aware, I'm a student of what was considered his arch nemesis, W.E.B. Du Bois, and I've written 2 books on him, and I've studied a great deal on Booker T. Washington. But one thing I had not learned until I began writing those commentaries and reading those correspondence is that there are few people who knew him as a president. It's very easy for all of us to say that we know Booker T. Washington, but I dare say that there have been 7 men to sit full-time in the capacity of a president, one of which was Booker T. Washington. And when one reads the commentary and the correspondence, and we know that he's written over 22 books, what one learns is that much of what he means to this world came out of him sitting in the post of the founding principal and president of Tuskegee University. In your own time and in your own reading, I encourage you to look at the original sources with which I used the Washington Word Forum. One book he's written, The Future of the American Negro, written in 1899. I've mentioned Up from Slavery, 1901. I also cite from My Larger Education, which he wrote in 1911. I've also shared from his Sunday evening talks with students, character building essays where he talks a great deal with students about a number of different topics. And last but not least, if any of you are interested in seeing those letters and correspondence yourself, you should apply to the University of Illinois Press, because that is where Lewis Harlan gathered the full range of all the public correspondence letters to constituent groups that he was engaged in. Once again, my title today is Let Examples Answer, and particularly let examples answer in the capacity of Booker T. Washington, the president. I have 10 very quick points, and they will indeed be quick, so you will be able to get to the cafeteria in time. I'm using the talk, let examples answer, but frankly, I'd rather have used the talk, not going to have Booker T. mad at me. It's very easy to sit out there in your different constituency groups and not to sit in the very seat that that man sat. And I've learned 10 important things from this man by reading his correspondence that I would like to share with you at this time. The first of which, in his capacity as a president, in a letter written to Francis Grimke on November 27, 1895, with respect to rumors. There was an incident where someone said that he did not help somebody as he ought. There was a young African-American man, and he was being chased by Klansmen, and they came to apply to Booker here at the campus. Word got out that Booker T. Washington, why didn't you help the man? And people said that he did something that he did not do. And he responded as such: I do not care to publish to the world what I do, and should not mention this excerpt for this except for the false representation of my character. I simply choose to help and relieve this man in my own way, rather than in the way some man 1,000 miles away would have had me to do it. In this letter, Booker T. Washington went on to say, that's not true. I didn't help that man. What I did not do was bring him on my campus so that my students would be endangered. I picked that man up, and I took he and his sons, and I took them to the train station. But how many of you know everybody didn't know what Booker did? They perceived by public rumor and innuendo what he did. And through his correspondence to a man 1,000 miles away, he had to share what he actually did, as opposed to what people perceived that he did. Secondly, I've learned from Booker T. Washington with respect to his life as a president of why he was successful as a fundraiser. In his book, Up from Slavery, we know that, if you did not know, this man is in fact the model for all university presidents when it comes to fundraising. And he shared the following: the more I come into contact with wealthy people, the more I believe that they are looking upon their money simply as an instrument which God has placed in their hand. The close, careful, and minute investigation that he always makes, referring to Mr. John D. Rockefeller, to be sure that every dollar that he gives will do the most good. An investigation that is just as searching as if he were investing his money in a business enterprise convinces me that growth in this direction is most encouraging. I know that there are many presidents that sit underneath my voice, but one of the things he talks a great deal about is that one does not simply walk into an office and a person gives you $1 million. The first thing they ask about is, how are you currently doing in your fiscal environment? What are you doing with your money? How do you spend your money? Throughout his correspondence, he constantly talked about we have to make sure that when we're communicating with constituencies, we can tell them what we do with the money, when we do with the money, and how we do with the money. How many of you know you got cousins and uncles that come and ask you for money all the time, and you know what they're going to go do with the money? How many of you would just throw your money to them and give it to them? You want to first know who the person is behind the position. You want to know what their vision is. You want to know what their focus is. And at Tuskegee University, as in the example of Booker T. Washington, we saw that he had a focus on his students, the sons and daughters of Mother Tuskegee and the sons and daughters of Booker. Thirdly, with respect to external recognition, in a letter, June 1, 1896, referring to Harvard University's honoring him, he said the following: your favor of May 28, informing me of the desire of Harvard University to confer an honorary degree upon me at the next commencement is received. In reply, I would say that the information is a great surprise to me. I shall be present at the time you name. How many of you know it's not what you say about yourself, but what others say about you? You don't want a president that nobody else wants. Everybody wanted Booker. Booker T. Washington was solicited constantly to leave and to go to other institutions. This model set forth a paradigm. He knew that as he went, Tuskegee went. Where he was invited, Tuskegee was invited. And if Tuskegee will only be known in Tuskegee, that is not far enough. Tuskegee deserves and shall be and should continue to be, just in the days of Booker, well known, worldwide known, nationally known. Everybody ought to want to hear and see the president of Tuskegee University. Fourthly, with respect to politics, how many of you know there were not a lot of people, similar to Martin Luther King when he's alive, we all honor him now, but there were a lot of people that did not like the way Booker did things. See, today we got Facebook and Twitter, and every time we got an opinion, we jump on Facebook and Twitter. Because we know. But when Booker T. Washington was around, he said the following in a letter, April 10th, 1896. He said, "Dear sir, I'm not active in politics, and I do not expect to be, and I have no claim upon your time or attention. I simply write to assure you that I'm doing in a rather quiet way whatever I can in connection with our mutual friend." Students, if you did not know, your founding principal and president had connections that you may not be aware of. He could personally go into the office of the president of the United States. He could personally go into the offices of the Rockefellers. He could personally call up any single significant major leader in the nation. And how many of you know he probably wouldn't have put it on Facebook? He preferred to move in a quiet way. How many of you know you don't put and tell everything that you do? You don't want a president that tells every little detail, every little reason why, every little issue. You want a president that knows how to move strategically, how to be wise. You'd rather have a president that's not known by the quantity of the people he knows, but what? The quality of the people he knows. Booker T. Washington set this stage very clearly for not only myself, but any other president in any other institution about how to operate. Fifthly, when it comes to management, he talked a great deal about the kinds of employees he wants to select to come alongside of him to serve. How many of you know that Booker T. Washington had to leave campus a great deal after he got it set up? He had to go out and he had to go raise money, but guess what? Somebody had to be watching the campus while he was gone. And how many of you know that you just can't select anybody to watch and do as you would do when you're gone, and you don't know if they're going to do exactly and in the manner that you would do it? How many of you would leave your children with anybody? I don't leave my sons with nobody that I don't trust. I don't leave my students with anybody I don't trust. I'm not going to leave the fiscal affairs to this place to anybody I don't trust. I'm not going to leave student affairs, advancement affairs to anybody whose competence, integrity I do not trust. And he said in this regard, he said, we want someone who is continually planning for the improvement and perfection of his or her work. This is what we want in this position, and we can accept nothing less. Tuskegee University, its management will reflect its leadership. The men and the women that I select to come alongside of me will reflect me, or they will not serve with me. They will do as I do, when I do, and how I do it. They will operate according to the greatest nine-letter word, which is integrity. They will operate according to the second greatest letter word, which is knowledge. And they will flee like the Dickens from the worst nine-letter word that in the history of human language I've ever heard of. It's ignorance. Sixthly, consistency in management. How many of you know that Booker T. Washington's older brother worked at this institution? His older brother. And that man Booker was pretty bad. Booker T. Washington would lit into his brother like he lit into anybody else. How many of you know that if you show favor to one person, they say, oh, this person, oh, this person. Oh, well, he doesn't get on this person. I'm going to get on this person. What Booker T. Washington said in a letter of August 31st, 1801, he told his older brother, he said, as to the barn, I noticed the plows, the wagons, and under the barn are not kept in an orderly, systematic manner. They're thrown here and there as much as one would want to see them. This should not be, sir, Mr. Washington. Talking to his own brother. Now, just imagine if he talked to his own brother that way, what would he say to us? Consistency. I dare say, like I say a great deal, there are only 3 friends I have. My wife and my 2 sons. Everything else is professional. Everything else is business. And that's the safest way. Whether it be my chief of staff, whether it be my VPs, whether it be staff members, the safest way to conduct business in a professional, ethical way that's filled with integrity is by treating everybody the same. Everybody the same, top to bottom. Next, 7, students. Now, I know this institution, we love our students. And you guys know that I talk a great deal about when you are a parent. If the only thing you do with your students is coddle them and say good things to them, how much you know you're doing half parenting? Every parent in here knows that if you don't tell your students the truth, you're not fully parenting. I know many of you may not be students of the Bible, but one of the things the Bible tells us that we speak the truth in love. And Booker did the same. He said in a letter, in a Sunday evening talk, he told the students, you're going to get some rooms that you do not like. They will not be perhaps as attractive as you desire, or they will be too crowded. You're going to get even persons for roommates with whom you think it's impossible to get along with. You're going to meet with some of your rooms are going to be too hot during the hot months and during the cold months. You're going to meet with all these difficulties in your room. Make up your mind that you're going to conquer them nevertheless. I've often said that the students in the early years of this school had such hard times with their room and have succeeded grandly. Many of you now live in palaces compared to the rooms in which these students had. He spoke the truth. Now, make no mistake, a university has a right and a responsibility, which we are focused on, to make sure that our students live in the very best facilities on any university campus. That is my commitment. I encourage each and every one of you under the sound of my voice, if students, you have not heard of this, you need to go to the website, the President's Office website, and review the vision document. If you have not heard of it, I have shared it everywhere. The focus of our capital campaign at this university is to improve the living, learning facilities throughout this campus. We are inviting corporations, foundations to come into this university, renovate, rebuild, restore. They can come in and do whatever they want to do with the buildings as far as I'm concerned, as long as they make them livable, and long as they make those classroom and lab environments for our faculty and students to live and learn in second to none. Eighthly, in respect to crisis. Now, how many of you know we've had several crises around here? How many of you know that in the midst of a crisis on a university campus, there is one person that's always going to be in the middle of it? This man. With respect to a crisis, there was a crisis that he experienced on November 24th, 1895, in the matter of a burning of the barn. And he told his chief financial officer, he said, "I'm very sorry about the loss of the barn, especially the cows and the feed." He said, we have needed for some time a larger and a better barn. Now I hope we shall get it. I shall leave the matters regarding the barn to your judgment, but I'm going to have the matter published in the papers. And I'm going to hope that there are going to be gifts to make up for the loss. What Booker T. Washington did was take a bad crisis situation and behind the scenes turn it around for good. If you do not have a university leader, a university communicator, if you don't have a marketing division, if you don't know that you have to get out there with the good news about this university as opposed to the bad news, then you do not understand the role of a leader. We don't put our trash on Facebook and Twitter. We don't do that. No institution should do that. What we do with Facebook and Twitter is to talk about the goodness of Tuskegee University, her students, her faculty, her teaching, her learning. And when there is a crisis, we make sure to acknowledge the crisis, but we don't want to be defined by crisis. We're not going to be defined by a few. We're not going to be defined by anyone other than who we are. The very best and brightest in the nation, Tuskegee University. And numbers 9 and number 10, and I know that this may not seem a lot to you. As a president, he served. He's also a father and a husband, and I shall give you two. On May 5th, 1904, he sent a note to his son's teacher. And he said, "Please tell Booker I'm here to be here for a week, and I should like to hear from him. He has a tendency, I've noticed, to sloop over when he sits and to stand not at all erect when he walks. I hope you will do all you can do to correct him." How many of you know, although he's a president, he was still a man who had duties in his own house? My wife and my children are the first and foremost important things in my life. And if I don't care for them, how can I care for 3,000 other students? Anyone that does not understand the roles and responsibilities of a parent cannot look to the sons of a man and see that they are in subjection to him. How can you expect anybody else to be in subjection to you? I'm involved in the lives of my sons. I will always be involved with the lives of my son. But that in no wise means a neglect or a dereliction of one's duties in the capacity of a president. And then lastly, I kind of like this one on Booker T. Washington because I don't think we ever see the soft side of Booker T. It's very hard to see. In the Martin Luther King lecture, I shared the personal side. I want to make this point again. Simply knowing the president does not equate to knowing the person. Knowing a position is not the same as knowing the person. The times you know who the person is when you have time to sit down with the person behind the position. You don't know me because you see me on Facebook and Twitter. You don't know Booker because you saw his pictures. I don't know Booker. I think Sister Robin Banks has a little more connection than all of us, but I don't personally know the man. Not going to be able to say who he is and what he does and all this. I made the point about the reference to Jesus and the selection of disciples, that there were many people that followed him. And he selected 70, then he selected 12, and then he selected 3, and then there was one who was John the beloved who laid on his bosom. My John is my wife. She's the one that knows it all. How dare anybody say they know a man because you heard him speak 3 times? How dare you say you know a man because you perceive to know him or you see him walking across the campus? The man is found in what my sister said earlier, in his character. Character is who you are most consistently. Evaluate yourselves 24 hours in a day and find out what you do the most, and that is who you are. Character is not your highest moment sitting up here singing or speaking. It's not your lowest moment when you're caught by the police doing something or you're caught in the dorm. That's not your character. Your character is who you are most of the time. Character is consistency. And I want this university to know who I am. And this is who I am most of the 24 hours a day. For those who know me, those who work closely with me, you want to know who your president is? Listen to these 4 things. I read, I write, I work, and I go home to my family. That is the character of this president. If I'm not doing either 4 of them, then I'm out of character. Work is email. Work is traveling. Work is going to engage donors. Work is behind the scenes managing. Work, work, work. And like I told you before, my reading and my writing, I'll do it for free. I'll always read and write. I believe that breadth and depth is the greatest 5 and 7-letter word combination, and that those who read are those who become broad and full of depth, not confined by narrow, belittling, parochial, and small-minded attitudes. I'm a man of the world because I read about the world and I travel the world. But in this last note, we see the person of Booker, and he says, Mrs. Washington, will you please let me know by bearer if you'll go driving with me at 5 o'clock? He made a point in his busy day to send a note to his wife. I use email now. I don't write the little memos. You probably couldn't read my handwriting anyway if anybody's seen it. I got some extra time. That's where I want to be. So in closing, these 10 things about Booker T. Washington, the president, is very difficult to see if you were and are not a president. But I do trust that you understand that the way this university's tradition was built is the way this university's trajectory will go. And I'm inviting all of the persons that I've asked to stand today, all of the constituency groups that has an interest in Mother Tuskegee. Notice I said an interest in Mother Tuskegee, not our own interests. If you have an interest in Mother Tuskegee, I invite you to celebrate with us this year the founding principal and president of Mother Tuskegee, Booker T. Washington, And I ask you to join me in looking back at him so that he can show us how Tuskegee University will be not the best HBCU in the land, not the best in the Alabama, but the greatest, the most exceptional university in the entirety of the world. Thank you.